Pretty big problem. Here's my problem.
Yeah.
Speaking of dates, you ever hear this phrase? Everything happens for a reason.
I hate that phrase.
Hate it.
Yeah.
It's a trigger for me.
Oh,
right?
Yeah? It's a trigger. You need to talk to a counselor.
I need to stamp it on every chick's forehead. Trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning. Everything happens for a reason. I know that sounds sexist, but I'm going to address that later. Everything happens for a reason. It's always driven me insane. Like, even when I was a little kid, always used to bug me.
It bugs me too.
Always has. Yeah. And I don't want to say, like, I'm not the kind of guy who just gets irate at people's coping mechanisms.
Oh,
you understand what I'm saying?
No, I always get irate.
I know you do, and I don't. Like, if somebody seems a little pretentious with their hobby, it doesn't bother me. Bothers you.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think it really bothers me. What people need to cope with life doesn't ever really bother me. Like somebody's being an asshole at a sporting event, I'm just like, you're charged up, whatever. You'll calm down. It's not a big deal. But this one phrase, everything happens for a reason, has always driven me insane, and I've never grown out of it. Like, you know how when you're a lot younger, things will make you crazy, and you'll speak out against them and get really passionate, and then you grow up, you're kind of like, oh, who cares about that thing? It's just people trying to live their lives.
I guess.
Yeah, like, who cares that they're so into, like, whatever activist thing that they're into?
No.
Doesn't matter.
I care.
You care, but I don't. And I
know.
can't shake this one, right?
Yeah.
I was going to bring it in as a throwaway, because, again, this girl says it to me. She gets screwed over by her roommate, this girl I was dating.
Yeah.
Screwed over by her roommate. And she goes, everything... Uh-oh. So this girl gets screwed over by her roommate. And she goes, well, everything happens for a reason. I'm like, oh, God, I was having a great time here. I wish you hadn't have said that.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's ruined.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
That ruins your day.
Well, it ruins everything, because my first thought is whatever you think is running the universe, like God or fate or midichlorians or whatever, you think that they care so much about you and so little about everybody else on Earth that they set up this elaborate system for you to, like, meet a cute guy on the way to work because your car broke down. Everything happens for a reason. Or you know what I mean? Like, or you found a new place to live. Everything happens for a fucking reason. But don't worry, hundreds of thousands of people starve to death. Where does that fit in your grand plan of everything happens for a reason? Are you so myopic that, like, you think the entire world is made for you? The entire universe? All these quadrillions of interactions every day is built so that you could get a new fucking phone? You know what I mean? And that's that's the gut reaction that I try to kill, because that's the insane reaction. And the sane part of me, the rational part of me says, it's just a coping mechanism. Don't worry about it. But I still can't get over it.
Yeah. Well, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. Everything happens for a reason.
I don't know, man. You got really worked up there about this, and I don't know why. Because there are entire branches of philosophy, Dick, that suggest that nothing outside the self exists.
What, like solopists?
Yeah. I think, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, does the universe exist for you? Well, they would argue that it does. Man,
it doesn't bother me. It's this phrase specifically. And believe it or not, I said this problem was going to take a long time today because I brought in a shitload of actual studies on it.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Well, what are you going to say?
I forgot.
You said philosophy and this whole idea that everything happens, like your Oculus Rift philosophy, that the world is all a construct in your imagination.
Okay, so this is another one of those classic Dick problems.
Yeah.
Where you bring it in, and I agree with you at the outset, but your reasoning is so far off and so far out of left field. Now, I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's just not complete. It's not the reason that I would say that phrase is a problem. I would say I don't want to shit all over. Maybe you brought something in similar.
No, go ahead. What?
Well, I would say everything happens for a reason does imply some kind of universal, new age, mystical being or energy or cause, be it...
purpose.
Yeah, some purpose, right? Some higher purpose. Well, then you're injecting religion into everyday conversations. And it's a little annoying.
It's annoying.
I think it's annoying when religious people preach
Yeah.
and non-religious people preach.
Yeah.
I think both are equally
Both are
annoying.
equally annoying. I totally agree with you.
So that's the reason I have a problem with it, is that it's annoying when people say everything happens for a reason. And I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure everything does happen for a reason. However, Dick, like the examples you gave about people, thousands of people dying from starvation or disease,
Hundreds
or bad
of
things,
thousands.
It's trivial to demonstrate that some good could have come from those tragedies. Like,
What are you talking about?
well, any kind of tragedy. Pick one.
He's trying to steer to the broken window
Yeah,
fallacy.
it sounds like it again. Is that what you're doing?
This is it's bigger than the broken window fallacy. This is a fundamental philosophical argument that say something bad happens. Well, in order for you to truly say that was bad, you have to weigh all the consequences down the line and then look at the aggregate positive consequences and the aggregate negative consequences, and then weigh the two and then see which one there were more of. If there were more negative consequences, then that was a bad thing. And if there were more good consequences, then that was a good thing.
So what are you saying? All the starving people, or it's worth? There is a plan because your car ran out of gas or something, and you met a cute guy. That everything happens for a reason.
So, see,
it's not because you were binge watching Orange Is the New Black all week that you didn't get your tire fixed and it blew out. That was not the reason.
See, you're looking at a negative. No, you're looking at a negative. But for example, had the people, like I gave the example of riots during the Solutions episode, I think Solutions number 6, I brought in riots. And I made the case that sometimes riots can have good net outcomes. Like, for example, I think it's called Stonewall riots in the 60s. That was where the gay and transgendered people were tired of the police harassing them, and they rioted against them. Mm-hmm. And that sparked the civil rights movement for gay and bi and lesbian people to fight for their rights. I would say that riot, even though riots inherently are bad, because of the violence and because of the destruction, some good came of it.
Sure, no one's debating that.
Yeah,
no one would debate that some good can come out of something horrific.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is someone could make that argument that, and I'm not making that argument.
When someone
but I believe
says everything happens for a reason, that's what they're trying to say. Is that what you're saying?
Possibly.
Okay, and I'll give them that. That's why that huge, insane outburst I just had, that's why I don't grab them by the shirt and say that to them. Okay. I'm like, okay, maybe they're trying to say something else and they can't phrase it correctly. You ever heard of this one? Teleology?
Yeah.
It's the explanation of phenomena. It's the explanation of phenomena by the purpose they serve rather than the postulated causes. That's what this is. And that's what I found when I started looking it up. This phrase, everything happens for a reason. There was a study done testing this teleological phenomenon. And they found that a shitload of people, both atheists and theists, describe things that happen to them and external events based on their outcome. That whole everything happened for a reason. They answer things that happen to them in their lives by that. That showing that it's a function of like people. This is like a characteristic of humans more than like a belief system, because both of them felt that way.
Yeah.
And the faster they had to make decisions and give their opinion on things, even people who didn't admit it, even people who said, no, things don't happen for a reason, it's just random chaos happening all the time, when they forced them to give an opinion on things with less time, they would trend towards this teleology, this teleological thinking.
Yeah.
Which means that it's the fallback. Like the fallback is to say, yep, everything happened for a reason.
You know, Dick, I believe one of the first or one of the most, I would say, influential thinkers in teleology was probably Aesop, with Aesop's fables. Aesop observed animals doing things and then kind of made fables about why they did them and so on and so forth. But I feel like a lot of Aesop fable type of observations have persisted today in not just our common vernacular, but in science, in biology specifically. I was looking this up after you sent me your problem this week, teleology, I looked it up and I found I knew this concept, but I didn't know the word for it. And I looked it up because there was something that always bothered me in biology textbooks. And biology at large still does this. They say like a biological function. This is from plato.stanford.edu. It says a biological function of stotting by antelopes is to communicate to predators that they have been detected. And another one is they say eagles' wings are naturally designed for soaring. Well, when you say that eagles' wings are designed for soaring, or antelopes have this behavior to prevent detection, or ants secrete this hormone to warn others, et cetera, you are implying that there is that higher purpose.
Right.
Right?
Right. Which you would think maybe they're teaching kids this. So here's something interesting that study found. Up until the age of 10, kids will describe things teleologically. Like they'll say lions are in the zoo because that's where they want to be.
Yeah.
Like that's why the lions are in the zoo. Or the ball's flying through the air because that's what the ball wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. What kind of dumbfounded me is how often it is found in biological texts and scientific texts. And then I read on this...
that could be because they're designed for kids, right? That's why I'm saying the kids thing, because that's how kids think.
No, it's not just kids, Dick. Watch any nature documentary. They say such and such animal does this thing because they evolved to do this thing to protect them, blah, blah, blah. That when you say that they evolved a certain way to protect themselves or whatever... Right. Even though that may not necessarily be the case, that may not be the cause of their evolution, it implies that there is a higher being or higher purpose for them. There's like, for example, ants and aphids have like a symbiotic relationship, right?
Yeah.
And they would say the incorrect phrasing would be to say that they evolved that way because it's mutually beneficial. You're saying the outcome exists, but you're conflating the outcome with the cause. You're saying the cause is because it's mutually beneficial. Well, it could also be happenstance. And it could also be, I mean, yeah, sure, it does benefit them. That selection does benefit them.
Sure.
That process, right?
But they're not designed for it. Like, you can't just say they're designed. It's wrong.
That's why I kind of have a problem with that aspect of science. And I was looking at this Stanford website, or I think it was this evolution website on Blogspot. They said that they go to great lengths to teach biologists not to use phrasing like this, not to use language like this. Yeah,
yeah. It's easier to teach like that, but it's like subtly harmful.
Yeah,
you would say. So here's why it's a problem, and here's why I thought it was interesting enough to bring in. And especially interesting that every single girl I've dated, except for one, has said this phrase at one point or another. People who have a tendency to reason about events teleologically also have a tendency to interpret behaviors in ways that weren't meant.
Oh,
because the symptom of teleological thinking comes from being able to understand people's states of mind, right?
Oh, yeah.
And when you understand people's states of mind, you really want there to be a state of mind. So you start taking random events and ascribing a motive behind it.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if a girl ever, or if a guy, because this research also showed remarkably, the scientists must be wrong on this, that there's no difference between men and women in gender or race when it comes to teleological thinking. So that idea of everything happens for a reason is ubiquitous.
You know, Dick, I think that this is something... You said at the top of your problem that this was something that could be an inherent quality of humanity, right?
And I'll tell you why after you're done.
Well, I have a theory because I've been thinking about this for a long time. People kind of laugh at the ancients for having silly beliefs like rain dances cause rain.
Right.
But I think that our minds, being rational, we try to ascribe reasons for why things happen because that's how we learn. We want to learn. It is fundamentally scientific to want to find a reason for why something happens. So I think a long time ago, this may have happened when the first rain shower occurred right after a big dance in some tribal culture somewhere, and they forever associated their dance with the rain because they did the dance and then the rain happened. Dogs learn this way too. If a dog pees outside every day and you give it a treat right after it pees, the dog starts to associate that behavior with that reward.
Sure.
That's how our minds learn and think. So it's not necessarily a flaw in humanity. It is annoying when it's wrong and when we don't look at it critically to determine whether or not that is the actual cause. But I think that fundamentally it's a useful process.
Well, here's why this is saying, and I get what you're saying, but this has a slightly different take on it.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about the dogs and the training, that simple example, they are definitely getting a positive feedback. This is saying that the early humans who were the rational ones, who, let's say, they're sitting around a campfire and the bushes rustle, and a bunch of the early people say, well, it's a bear or it's God. He's pissed. I got to get out of here. They run. The curious ones, the rational ones go, well, that's not necessarily true. Let me just see if it is a bear. 1 time out of 10 that it is a bear, they're killed.
Yeah.
So it weeded out all of these rational thinkers, and we're left with the panicky idiots who ascribe motives to things that aren't real, and who look for an immediate self-serving purpose to all the bad shit that's happened to them or the good shit. You know how, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that people who are successful will attribute their success to the things they've done, when a lot of times, even when it doesn't matter. Like in random groups in studies, they'll give people an advantage, and then at the end of the experiment, the people with the natural advantage will assume they did something in the experiment, even knowing that they started higher, that they started with more assets or whatever, that they started with an advantage. They will ascribe their success to their own actions. That's how deep I'm saying this teleological thinking goes.
Do you think that's a problem?
Absolutely.
You think it's bad when people who say, like in a test or a study, they are given an advantage and then they ascribe a reason that justifies their advantage?
Well, I'm saying this is bad in society because people who start successful and end up successful can necessarily look down on everybody who wasn't as successful as them and say, I got here because of me. And because of me, instead of saying, you know, maybe that had something to do with it, but maybe it was also in a large part that I started like leagues ahead of all you guys with a shitload of money.
Yeah, there's people who were born on third base and think they hit triples.
Exactly right, Sean.
Yeah. Interesting, Dick.
And that's because of this type of thinking.
Well, this is super interesting coming from you.
Why?
Because I totally agree with it. And it seems like something that you wouldn't argue for, because it sounds like, well, this is going to be a topic for another show.
What?
But it sounds like it's contrary to your thinking. It doesn't sound like a very libertarian thought. It sounds like
What is that?
It sounds like something that could come out of Obama's mouth.
Well, guys, I got to go kill myself. Wait, why? The idea that some people had an advantage?
Yes, because fundamentally, Dick, what you're saying is that rich people aren't always necessarily there because they earned it.
Oh, well, of course.
The vast majority of wealth in this country is inherited.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no questioning that, though.
Right. And they have an unfair advantage over everyone else.
Yeah. Now, however, if you're talking about taking away that advantage, I'll kill you. That's where this thinking might end.
So you're
you know
okay.
what I mean?
You're okay with people having unfair advantages and then lording it over other people. You're okay with a dynasty, right?
If it's a Dick dynasty, yes, of course. Well, I don't understand to be okay with. Like there's natural advantages in the world and there's not, and that's what started me hating this phrase. Everything happens for a reason. Because I look at people who say that and I say, yeah, the reason that you're even saying that is because you're born with this enormous advantage of being in a society, like a genetic lottery of being born in a society where you can pause for a second and think about that rather than running to get water every day and trying to not get assaulted.
Dick,
right?
I am so excited right now. Like I want to do a little jig. I want to dance because you have set a trap for yourself.
How's it a trap?
You opened up the bear trap and you set the snare. And I'm just waiting because you haven't said anything yet to step in that bear trap. But you will. Because I know you. I've known you for a long time, and I know you the way you think.
Right.
We're going to come back to this. You mark this, episode 56. We're going to come back to this at some point in the future because I know there's a Dick versus Dick brewing. It's coming.
Oh,
I could feel it. It's like you can hear the rumbling in the back in the distance. The horses rumbling. Like this is a massive Dick versus Dick coming, buddy. I'm excited. Anyway, dude. I think that's an interesting problem and a well-researched one. And this is
It's all one study. I mean, it's one URL. Don't give me too much credit.
Well, no, I looked into it. I looked into it. There is a lot written about teleology and its implications in theology and sciences.
Well, what's interesting is that all these seemingly unrelated problems, like this, or if you want to reference the last one, like this idea of this disdain for, like, I got here because I deserved it and not because out of luck. All these problems, which you could never solve by looking at them on the surface, right? Like, the solution isn't, fuck you, we're taking your money. If you don't understand the root of it, which is, I think, this type of thinking, then you can't fix it. And this type of thinking is inherent to everybody.
I think that type of thinking, though, Dick, and this is ultimately where I think I lean towards voting this down as a problem, is that it is fundamentally the same type of thinking that causes us to want to be scientists and causes us to want to learn. It causes us to want to determine why things happen. And the people who are dumb, the people who are lazy thinkers, and the people who are lesser minds will associate two unrelated events and say, well, A happened and B happened, therefore A caused B, which is a logical fallacy unless there's some evidence for it, right? Those are the dumb people. But the smart people will use the scientific method and say, well, this happened. It must have happened for a reason. That's teleology, right? Essentially, everything has a purpose.
No, and teleology is the opposite. It's not, I know what you're saying. I know that you think this is like the impetus for smart people to look for things to understand, but I think this is separate from that need to understand. Like,
how's it different?
This is just me saying it. I think it's a separate drive. I think it's the same thought mentality that I think this is fundamental to human nature and helpful for our society, for us as humans to be able to answer questions. Because if we didn't do this, we would be fish. We would be donkeys. We'd be dumbass ostriches sticking our heads in the sand, not doing anything, not asking why, not trying to learn. But the people who stop at the first theory that they have without testing that theory, they're teleologists who sit there and say, well, it rained right after I did a dance yesterday, therefore my dance caused the rain. They don't test that theory. I think scientists do. I think it's different than what you're saying, and the only thing I base that on is that these scientists and smart people have to repress the urge to just say something is the cause, say something happened because of the cause. Like, I think that's the knee-jerk reaction. I think totally rejecting that line of thought is what leads someone down the path of critical reasoning. Not the opposite of this teleological thinking. That's what I think. I totally understand what you're saying. That's just my opinion.
Well, vote it down.